Today, I have the opportunity to interview Brian Szuberla. He is a CPA with the firm Hughes Szuberla CPAs. And purpose of this video this morning is to learn about how do you choose a CPA? I mean, most of us that need a CPA perhaps don't have the first idea of what makes a good CPA, and do you even need one? And so I'm going to ask Brian some very rudimentary questions so that I can hopefully help the rest of you navigate this. How do I select my CPA? So Brian, thanks for being here.
Yeah, my pleasure, Nana.
Okay, so you finished at Deloitte, right? Was that when you then moved on to deciding to purchase your firm?
Yeah. I had spent the first 10 years of my career working at a large firm, learning my craft and learning a lot of the principles that go into helping people out with tax returns, whether it's small business or individuals. So from there, we started to look at options, including, just trying to start the firm organically and grow, from our own contact list and then continue to market ourselves. And after talking with some people that had done it, we went the direction of looking at a practice that was already existing, that already had, a pretty good solid client base. And we purchased that from the owner of the business. He was a sole owner operator. So he had built this up organically over about 10 years. And he wanted to move on and try something else. He wanted to get out. So he sold it to us over a transition period. Like at first, my wife, who's also my partner in the firm, Mason, she was working for him as an employee to really sort of see from the inside what it was. It was a real firm, so we didn't feel like we were just writing checks for nothing. And she learned the client base. She learned some of the clients, not all of them. And then eventually I came in to transition out Chris, who's the Hughes and Hughes Szuberla. And so now it's just Mason and I. We have another CPA named Kevin who's working with us. And then we have a couple other CPAs that will consult with us. So if there's some area of the tax code that we're not proficient in, or not experts in, we will bring someone else in to help us out.
I love what you just said, because when I'm working with students who are thinking about wanting to become an entrepreneur at some point, the best advice I can give them is go work in a company that's very similar to what you want to do, so you can actually see the day-to-day. Because if you go to work for a massive company, you're going to only see what you see in this immediate office, where the accounting department might be in New York City or another state far away. So I love that Mason actually jumped in with the company that you guys ultimately purchased. I think that's brilliant.
Yeah, we had structured the purchase agreement in a way that we had an out after that first tax season. If she didn't like it, we weren't on the hook for anything. And she would at that point just basically get a salary for that period of time. And then ultimately we decided to move forward with it, but that was the way it was structured.
So tell us, what's it like owning your own firm as opposed to working for somebody?
Well, it's certainly a lot harder than I ever thought it would be. I would say the level of effort and the amount of decisions that you have to make, you see it from start to finish, whether it's hiring, firing, what sort of insurance are we going to carry, what sort of software are we going to use, all these decisions that when you're an employee somewhere else, someone else is making, and that's really their full-time job, is to think about the operations and not necessarily serve clients, whereas we were the ones serving the clients. So now we're doing it all. And we took our lumps. We figured out that we shouldn't be doing everything. We should be hiring people that are good at what they do and relying on them to do a good job, just like everybody that trusts us with their taxes. So it took us a little bit to embrace that. It took a little bit of us to get over the hurdle of writing checks out to people. But ultimately, what we keep coming back to is what's the highest and best use of our time. And that's serving clients, giving tax advice. It's not, trying to troubleshoot network IT issues. It's not, HR related items. So We've sort of been able to grow the practice, I think, smart by being strategic about what we outsource that we don't handle. But still, like, ultimately those questions still come back to us because we've got to make decisions, even if we're not the ones, doing the legwork on it. So that's the most stressful part, is when you have employees and you have all these other things going on that need the business to run smoothly, dealing with all of that.
Absolutely. So if I'm a young lady thinking I need a CPA, how do I go about selecting one? How do you know who's good and who's not?
Yeah, that's a great question. I would say maybe 10 years ago is a much different answer than it is right now. A lot of our clients find us online. So they do some sort of search, whether it's Google or Yelp or LinkedIn. I would say that's probably about half of the business that comes in, with the other half being word of mouth referrals. So you have someone that you know and trust in your life that uses us, and then throughout conversation or whatever it is that prompts the conversation, they name drop us, and then they say, yeah, you got to call Brian, he's great, he'll take care of you, or you should call Mason, she's the best at this and this, she's helped me out a ton. So that still exists. I feel like even though we've gone very virtual, we've almost relied on our networks more now, because it's so much easier to build them out and to use them than it was in the past. So I think ask around, ask your friends, ask family members who they use. And generally speaking, if the people you trust this person, then that's a really good first step. And then from there, I think is it a good fit for you? Because it might be a good fit for them, but not for you. And that comes down to personality, skill, availability. Some people are just so booked out that they give bad service. I know as our growing pains have emerged, that's been one of the things we've struggled with, is we want to say yes to all these people, but do we have the ability to still serve them the way we want to? And that's tough. I think that there's definitely a need for good CPAs out there. And there's not a ton of them. There's a lot of bad ones. But there's a lot of good ones too, but just the needs with how complex things have gotten with the tax code, the demand seems like it's just far outpacing the supply.
So let's talk about somebody who's got a high net worth. They've got a big company. They obviously don't have time to think about their taxes. They just have to hope to God that they're going to get some really good advice and really good tax strategy, this and that. So just because their friend likes their CPA probably still isn't enough juice to make a solid decision. So as a CPA, what would you tell somebody who's making a big decision financially of entrusting a company with their work? What kinds of questions should they be asking?
Yeah, that's a great question. We always set up a introductory call, whether it's video call, now that everyone's so comfortable with Zoom, or an in-person meeting, that we'll just sort of go through, here's our background, here's our experience, here's the services we offer, here's the stuff we don't offer, because not every CPA does everything under the sun. If you have a business that has selling products as opposed to services, one of the services we don't offer is sales tax compliance. So we won't, help you track the sales tax that you should be collecting from your customers and remitting. So maybe that wouldn't be a good fit for us for that particular business. So really having that conversation, and as a business owner, as a high net worth individual, hopefully you have an understanding of what your needs are, or at least you have the ability to describe your situation. So then someone sitting across the table can explain to you, well, this is some of the things that you could benefit from. These are some of the things that we can help you think through to get strategic about saving money. Maybe not this year, but maybe over the next 5-year period, we can structure your affairs in a way that if we look at it over 5 years, you're going to be better off at the end of that 5th year than you would have been if you didn't do this. We work a lot in conjunction with financial planners. So if you just have a CPA that's in a silo, that isn't talking to a financial planner that you also have, I'd say that's not where the industry is going. I think that the collaboration between your insurance person, your CPA, your financial advisor, that's really the direction that financial services as a whole is moving, is whether or not it's the same firm offering all of it, but at least being able to have an integrated view and be able to, not step on each other's toes and do something that, isn't beneficial for the other way. Because at the end of the day, it's all about how much money do you have in your pocket, and taxes is just one component of it. That's what the government takes out of your pocket. It's how much money are you earning and how much money are you making on some of those investments that you have. That's also extremely critical.
That was just great. Thank you. I love that answer. Okay. So when somebody moves from New York City to California, for example, and they'd like their CPA in New York, but they're kind of a small firm in New York, yep, should they get a local CPA because the tax laws are different in that state?
They're different in most states. There's a lot of fundamentals that apply across the board when it comes to state taxation. For example, a lot of them, they start with what was the federal number, and then they make certain adjustments in order to come up with the state number. And like some states like Colorado, for example, they basically take the federal number. They don't try and write their own laws. They just say whatever is good enough for the feds is good enough for us. Arizona is very similar, right? But California, us being, I don't know. I don't want to get into too much politics, right, but we tend to do our own thing here in this state. So our rules are very much different than the federal rules. I think New York is also a good example of, they have their own sort of quirks. I think New York and California are two of the most aggressive states out there in terms of taxing their residents. So I would recommend it for anyone coming into California from another state. But there are plenty of competent CPAs that are around the country that work with California-based clients and understand the rules. So I wouldn't say it's a hard and fast, but if you have made that move, maybe ask your CPA, hey, how many clients do you have in the state of California? And if they don't say dozens or hundreds, then maybe you think about making a switch.
So does it matter the niche that somebody owns a business in terms of the CPA they hire?
That's a great question. I think that there's a lot of areas of the tax code that have specific things carved out for different industries. For example, the restaurant industry. And that's a byproduct of how the income tax code gets written. It gets written by individual congressmen who are subject to political pressures in their home states. So these industry groups will get together and they will lobby specific congressmen in the areas that they work. For example, a lot of the alternative energy, wind farm, big solar farm credits came out of the middle of the country, because there's a lot of wind in Nebraska, Iowa, country, or where it's really flat. Yes. So those congressmen from those jurisdictions were very critical in getting the tax breaks passed. So restaurants, I would say, is one. Any sort of service business, I would say, you don't really need anything niche with that. So if you are providing a marketing service or a CPA service, or you're a dog walker, or whatever you're doing that's service based, generally speaking, most CPAs should be able to handle that. Anytime you're selling a product or you do manufacturing, I would say that's another area where you want to make sure someone's proficient in the rules surrounding depreciation of capital assets like machinery, equipment, but then also some of the other tax breaks that are out there, because there are a lot for companies that manufacture, because that's been a real big push of the last couple of administrations, is to support manufacturing jobs in the States, as opposed to things that get offshore.
So good CPAs asking a lot of really good questions of their potential client.
Yeah, and it's a two-way street in that initial conversation. Like, how many manufacturing clients do you have? If I am a company that does manufacturing here in the States, if the answer is zero, then I wouldn't say it's a deal breaker at that point, but you should think about it, because the unless they have another resource with another that you feel comfortable, right? Because we don't know everything. For example, some of the times when we have companies that have multinational operations, so they have a subsidiary located in Mexico or subsidiary located in Israel, we will consult with some of our colleagues that I've grown up in practice with that specialize in that area. So I'll ask, hey, Martin, how does this work? Or hey, this is how I think this works. Am I right? And hey, can you actually prepare all of the forms to make sure I've crossed the T's and dotted the I's, to make sure there's no foot faults? Because that's just as critical as knowing it, is making sure that you do it correctly on the forms so as not to cause any red flags with the IRS.
That's excellent. And so essentially, I would think when you're hiring a CPA, you kind of almost want to ask the questions of, do you have a large network of fellow CPAs in various fields who can help you with whatever it is?
Yeah, absolutely. And that's where I think it's important for the client, for the customer, to be knowledgeable about their tax needs, right? Because not everybody needs to have a firm like ours that has capabilities to serve multinational, because it's never going to come up. They're only going to operate maybe just in the one state that they're in.
Right.
But that's the vast majority of our clients are clients that they're with us not because we're some sort of differentiating technical, but because of the personalities, our responsiveness, our fees, our communication skills, things like that separate us from other firms. That's why those clients are with us. Or it's they trust us because their friend trusted us.
And you guys deal with expats, right? A lot. Is that a niche for you?
Yeah, very much so. So that was, we purchased the business. That was the core business that we bought. So it was primarily individuals that live overseas that qualify for certain tax breaks, based on the fact that they don't live in the United States. They live in Germany, or they live in Japan, or we have a number of clients that do defense contract work. So they've been in certain areas like Iraq or Afghanistan before the most recent takeover by the Taliban, or they're in the Philippines, or they're in Vietnam. They're anywhere that the U.S. military has an international presence, but they're working for private companies in a contractor role. So we have well over 1,000 clients that work in that area. So that would be a very big area of expertise for us. But that's not the whole firm.
Right.
Mason and I, when we purchased this business, we recognized that that's not what we learned when we were working. So we learned it, but we're building out the practice a lot more with high net worth individuals, say someone that maybe has stock options in their return and some of the complexities that are around that, small business owners, talking through what type of business entity should they use to operate their business, whether it's a corporation or an LLC, and should they become an S corporation, or should they continue to operate as a sole proprietorship, things like that. I would say that's become what was almost all expats. Now it's like 50-50.
I see. Very good. Well, is there anything else you want to share about your accounting firm before we say goodbye?
Yeah, so we've started to branch out. So not just doing taxes, we've started to offer a bookkeeping service. We do some payroll services. We're really trying to become a one-stop shop for the small business owner. And then if we can't do it, we will find someone that can either subcontract out with them, or we will work with you as a liaison with that other company. So we really want it to be a seamless experience for the user, and B, whether it's you have a legal question. Okay, well, I'm not a lawyer. I'm not going to give you legal advice, but here's a couple of people that I think would work for you, and trying to offer that to our clients. That's, I think, one of the differentiators between our firm and maybe other CPAs is we have a more holistic business view.
That's massive, because nobody wants to try to call up all their friends for an attorney and for a doctor for this and that. And it's really cool that you guys have a ton of referrals for people who need them right away. And the fact that you guys are so smart and talented, you're not going to hook up with somebody who's less than qualified.
Yeah, we definitely vet out the people, and we when we get bad feedback, or most of these people we've used ourselves personally.
Right.
So they're part of a personal network, so we can speak to the level of service. But yeah, it's I think it's, like I said, I think that's where the financial services, and I very much view CPAs under that umbrella. It's moving in that direction where you want to have someone who can get on a Zoom call with you that can be an advisor, not just in one specific area, so that you've got 4 advisors. And generally speaking, that has been reserved for the highest of the high net worth individuals, right? Because they could afford to build out what's called a family office, where they have an accountant on staff, they have a lawyer on staff, they have a CFO who runs, investments. But I feel like it's now the way that technology has come and the way that the industry is moving, that service offering is being rolled out, or at least I'm trying to roll it out at a much more volume-based practice, but on normal people.
Tremendous, tremendous. Brian, I really appreciate your time. If someone wants to learn more about your firm, how can they do that?
Yeah, best way is to go to our website, www.cpas.com. And then up on the top, you'll see Meet the Team as one of the links, and you can check us out, click on our pictures, and contact us from there.
Outstanding. Well, I wish you the very best of success. And again, thank you so much.
Thanks.
You're welcome.
Bye.
Bye.